Well, an investigative piece by the Daily Maverick has uncovered allegations of assault by crime prevention wardens. They were introduced, you may recall, by the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi in February of this year in a bid to tackle rampant crime, or at least help to tackle that crime. Well, now it's alleged that the wardens assaulted a resident in Katlehong, who they accused of being a drug dealer. For more on this, we're joined by Maverick Citizen editor Mark Heywood. Mark, a very good evening to you. Your team has been looking at the story of this one particular man from Katlehong. For the benefit of viewers who've not seen your reporting in the last few weeks, let's go back for a moment, because as you've been reporting, he was allegedly harassed and assaulted on more than one occasion by the wardens.
Good evening. Yes, thank you. Yes, this issue first came to our attention when we were contacted by the mother of this young man, who's a domestic worker. And basically what he alleges happens, and certainly he bears the wounds to show it, is that he was twice visited by crime prevention wardens, the so-called Panyaza, who said that they were searching for drugs. They didn't find drugs either time. On both occasions, they assaulted him and turned his house upside down. But on the second occasion, they beat him very, very badly, in fact, so badly that he was hospitalized for several days. And today, 2 months later, he is unable to urinate. He has to wear a catheter. He's traumatized from the assault. And that's where our investigation started. And we can also say that accompanying these group of wardens was a police officer. They were in the company of a police officer. So it's a very, very serious assault, and something that we had to look into.
Are you any clearer, Mark, on why this man was targeted in this way?
Well, there doesn't seem to be any good reason for targeting him. That has to be investigated. But the problem is that what we discovered when we started to investigate it is that there's very little room or system for people to make complaints if they face this type of assault. What I can tell you is that the Gauteng crime prevention wardens do not fall under IPID, so you can't complain to IPID. The most you can do is lay a complaint or make a charge at a police station, or lay a complaint at the Department of Community Safety, who is the government department that is meant to be responsible for their oversight. In this instance, he did lay a charge at the police. He did try to lay a complaint at IPID, and it was only after our first report about what happened to him that he was contacted by the Department of Community Safety, and has in fact also been visited by IPID, and they've taken a statement. But as I've said to you, they don't have jurisdiction over this type of misconduct.
Two questions for you then on that. What is the point of IPID now reaching out to take a statement if they've got no jurisdiction over these wardens? And B, does the Community Safety Department in Gauteng itself have actual clear guidelines on what the disciplinary or even investigative measures would be in a case where these wardens are accused of assault, as we're now hearing?
Well, I mean, I think you have to ask IPID that question. I'm assuming that the reason IPID came was for two reasons. One, because of the publicity surrounding it, and secondly, because of the allegation that a police officer was present and that these wardens fall under the control of the Katlehong police station. As far as the Department of Community Safety is concerned, well, they said that they weren't aware of any reports of assault when I first spoke to them, and their complaint mechanisms are everything but clear. And in fact, more and more what we are discovering is that there is very little clarity of policy about the crime prevention wardens, about their powers, about what happens if their powers are abused. And this is where our story has led us, in a sense, into looking at the legality of these officers. And what we've discovered is, in fact, that the Gauteng crime prevention wardens are set up completely outside of the law.
And one of the other things, in fact, you said, I'm looking at your piece here where you say new evidence from a whistleblower basically suggests that even the training given to these wardens is not up to standard. And that raises possible questions about whether, A, at a very basic level, they know what they're doing. B, it could also indicate that there may be a danger to society, to communities, if indeed there are situations where, shall we say, it's a highly charged environment, even if they're accompanied by police, if they're not properly trained.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we know that anybody dealing with crime in our province needs to be very, very well trained, whatever their role or their responsibility, because crime in Gauteng is extremely violent. It is out of control. I mean, just to give you one example, between April and June this year, there were 1,489 murders in Gauteng alone. So you really need, if you're going to put people in to assist the police to do the functions which are meant to be given to the crime prevention wardens, then they need to be very well trained. Well, as often happens when you start investigating these things, we were contacted by a whistleblower, we were supplied with certain documents, with certain correspondence, and it seems to suggest that the training is, to put it fairly mildly, inadequate in my view. I have attempted to see whether it is accredited by the Safety and Security Education and Training Authority. I can't say definitively yes or no, but it seems to be no.
And it appears from the response that you got as well from the Gauteng Community Safety Department that basically this training, it's been described as intensive training, but also ongoing training, which suggests that these are people who are basically being trained on the job in some aspects.
That's right. I mean, the difference between what the Gauteng Community Safety Department and what the Premier's office has said about the nature of the training and what the wardens and people who observe the training tell us is many, many miles apart from each other. And you know, what worries me is two things. One is the vulnerability and danger that these wardens themselves face in communities by being underprepared and undertrained. But secondly, as you say, putting people who are not trained, who don't understand the law, who don't understand their powers, in a situation where there's such poverty and inequality always creates the risk of an abuse of power. And the intention of the Gauteng government is to provide at least some of these wardens with firearms, which one expert said to me would be a total disaster if that were to happen, partly because of the risk of abuse, but also, as we know, we already have a problem with firearms being stolen in large numbers from fully trained members of the police. So this whole thing seems to be very, very poorly conceived and very poorly executed. And as I've said to you, actually it has taken place outside of the law because there has been no legal authorization yet given by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services to set this force up. And
from your reporting, it's been suggested as well that the implementation of this program now was for politically expedient reasons. I know some have already denied that from when the launch was announced. But I want to go back to the gentleman in Katlehong, because from what you've written now, you say that he still has to undergo some surgery, but also more worryingly, still fears for his life. What does he fear will happen or could happen?
Well, you know, he's fearful that these wardens could return and exact some form of retribution because of the fact that he's gone to the media and that he's gone to the police. And he's having great difficulty at the moment moving around because he's in very serious pain all of the time and on painkillers. And that's really his greatest fear. I mean, I know his name. We didn't reveal his name in the article, but his name obviously is now known to the police and to the authorities.
Mark Heywood, good to speak to you, editor at Maverick Citizen. Thank you for your time tonight.